Much as I might like to make use of it both for roleplay and for anything mechanically relevant, alignment just doesn't really go incredibly well with some settings. Hello there everyone, and welcome back down here to the Gamer's Den with me, your host, Jordan, your Master of Lore and Storyteller Extraordinaire, bringing you another quick tips for DMs today, talking about the particular game settings where alignment and the associated mechanics don't really work quite so well, or at least you have to kind of readjust and kind of reinterpret a little bit to make them work better. And in particular, that comes down to sci-fi, dystopian sci-fi settings, like cyberpunk or Shadowrun. In these kinds of settings, alignment doesn't really quite fit in the same way, and we'll go over why in just a moment. But if you're new here to the channel, go on down there, hit the subscribe button, and become a regular member here at the Gamer's Den. Or if you've already listed yourself on such an incredible roster of legendary heroes, then go on down to hit the like button and share the video far and wide. Now, let's talk about why alignment doesn't fit into your dystopian styled settings. It's not just sci-fi. If you're doing dystopian fantasy or adjacent reality kind of things, it's the modern day and age in our current world and timeline, but it's just taking a complete and total dystopian route. Alignment systems really don't quite work the same way because morality is one of those things that just really gets turned on its head in a dystopian setting. Why? Well, most dystopian settings feature massive economic divide, a huge gap between different classes, corporations running amok, having as much power or influence over governments, and then also massive environmental damage as well too. So food shortages, overpopulation, disease outbreaks. You have plagues descending and crossing all over different parts of the globe. So it's a very, very harsh setting where day-to-day survival is kind of a struggle, and maintaining some semblance of peace or normalcy, calm, all of these things that we take for granted just are all completely thrown out the window. And with Shadowrun and Cyberpunk as the leading examples, you're playing people that have fallen into the legalistic gray zones. You're really not quite illegal, but you're really not quite legal either. And the work that you're doing is full of all kinds of plausible deniability. Because let's face it, none of the megacorps, none of the major governments that still exist, they don't want to be caught with their hands in the metaphorical cookie jar, stealing tech, schematics, employees, brilliant minds and scientists or mages from one another. So they hire Mr. Johnson or Herr Schmidt and have them go and find a couple of Shadowrunners to go and do the job. People with the skill set necessary to be able to accomplish these things that provide plausible deniability, because everybody can go, oh no, wasn't us. We have no clue who hired those assets. And on and on and on. So that disposability of human life or mortal life, and depending on the game you're playing, well, that gets turned into an asset. Your disposability as a person is an asset that you can leverage for financial gain, financial security. And you can already see where trying to apply alignment in this kind of a situation really kind of starts to break down a little bit, at least as it's traditionally implemented. Good versus evil, law versus chaos, the neutrality in the mix there. So being lawful good doesn't hold the same weight, because trying to be good in such a setting means putting your own survival at risk to a much greater degree than you would in a more normal kind of setting where things are relatively stable. There's a equilibrium there that is not just driven by, pure financial gain and a complete disregard for all the harm that's actively being caused and going on around you. So, and being lawful good also carries some very awful implications for these kinds of a game, because you're dedicated to law, you want to be a good person, but law and order is the number one, is right up there with one of the things that has to be maintained. Like, there's a right way to go about things. Trying to change the system from inside when it's a system that's inherently thoroughly entrenched to the point that it actively fights and resists change, because all these companies are trying to maintain their supremacy and dominance at the top, at the very tippy top. They want all the money, all the market share. They want that future growth and opportunities for investment and acquisition, all of that. So yeah, morality and alignment already gets turned on its head, and with that, those questions of morality, what would you do to survive, are already at the forefront. Even if it's not the central focus that you as a DM are providing to your players, it's still something that's just naturally going to come up as a result of the setting. Cyberpunk does this very explicitly in many instances. Watching Mike Pondsmith DM games for other people, one of the things he says, you do not save other people in this setting. You don't save other people. You're not looking out for anybody else. You're looking out for yourself. If you're looking out for somebody else, it's because you're counting on them to some degree to be able to look out for you too. You're watching each other's backs. But betrayal is something that happens all the time, because at a certain point, when's all that money? When are those Eurodollars going to be a little bit too much to resist? So that all gets thrown into the mix there as it is, and adding in mechanics of alignment in their traditional sense is not something that's going to work out very effectively, and it's going to feel more like a hindrance and opportunities to punish players rather than let them try to do the best they can. And Shadowrun actually has an interesting mechanic for this. When you're gaining karma and everything, if you're doing a cold-hearted run, you're going to get less karma, less experience to spend on upgrading your statistics, your skills, all of those things. But you usually get paid more new yen for those kinds of runs. But flip side of that, there are some things where you're doing a job for the feel good. You're not getting as much money out of it, maybe not as much as you might otherwise charge, but you're going to gain additional points to spend for upgrading your character. So you do have opportunities for a feel-good moment, but you're still a lot of times doing bad things to get that done. As if you're trying to help a small, relatively isolated, or at least outcast community maintain its own little haven and security, then you're going up against a corporation. Well, most of those workers, most of the day-to-day drones, boots on the ground kind of people, they're not really looking to cause harm, but it's just a thing that happens. And while they may not be looking to cause harm over the course of their duties, it's their paycheck. It's how they're going to live and provide security for themselves, their family members, possibly their friends. So it's not a situation where either party is necessarily evil. It's just one is doing harm and has just faceless armies of workers to get it done, and the larger will of corporations doesn't really notice the smaller things that they're stepping on in the process, because they got to turn a profit somehow. So yeah, you can see already, and some of you may have already known this. This may have been blatantly obvious to several of you, or it's something you've talked about or discussed in your own groups, and that's fine. And please actually chime in with your thoughts and your comments down below. Absolutely do that, because it's always interesting reading about other people's experiences with these kinds of things. Because not everybody's a DM, and not all players necessarily want to think about all of this. Some people just want to play, and that's fine too. Also, one other thing to add on here that maybe I should have said at the start: if you like having alignment systems in these kinds of settings or games, if you've applied them yourselves and you and your party are having fun, whether they're your friends, family, or random people you're meeting up with at your local hobby store, that's fine. Do that. That trumps everything that I might ever say here on this channel. That trumps anything that anybody might say on any channel, because really, at the end of the day, if you're having fun and your party's having fun, that's the only thing that matters. That's the whole point of all of this, is to have an engaging, enjoyable experience, having a gripping experience. Not everything is always going to be fun 100% of the time, but if you're in a game where you're really just in deep and feeling it, absolutely wonderful. So go with whatever is engaging you, driving your friends, and allowing you all to have fun with your experiences. But, of course, what do you think? Go on down to the comments below and let me know your thoughts. Did you like today's video? Did you dislike it? Let me know down below. Either way, hit those like or dislike buttons and we'll engage in discussion down below. And remember, if you're new here to the channel, go on down there, hit the subscribe button, and become a regular member here at the Gamers Den. Well, with all that said, I've been your host, Jordan, your Master of Lore and Storyteller Extraordinaire. Thank you all so very much for your time, and you all have yourselves a good night.